rebel groups. We're watching you too.
The United Nations Security Council referred Libya to the ICC. The chief prosecutor believes there is enough evidence to dig deeper. He's highlighted several incidents and allegations of mass killings. The 15th of February in Benghazi, the 16th of February in Misrata, Al-Baida, Derna, Ajdabaya. On the 18th, again in Misrata, and the 20th in Tripoli and Al-Zawaya. Speaking to Al Jazeera, he highlighted what is under investigation.
Crime against humanity is a widespread attack against civilian population. So if you have security forces shooting civilians in a square who are doing a demonstration, this is a crime against, this could be a crime against humanity.
The prosecutor believes the rapid call to investigate marks a dramatic change, that the world will act quickly when people are being killed, and those behind it will face justice. Alan Fisher, Al Jazeera, the ICC in The Hague.
Well, let's join our three guests now to get more on this. From London, Mohammed Abdul Malik. He's the chairman of Libya Watch. That's a human rights organisation that monitors and collects evidence of human rights abuses in Libya. From Oxford, Sami Hermes, a visiting fellow at St Anthony's College at Oxford University. Mr Hermes writes extensively on revolutions across the Arab world and the impact of international intervention. And again from London, Mark Ellis, Executive Director of the International Bar Association. Mr Ellis comments regularly on international prosecution cases such as the ICC. Thank you all for joining us. If I could start with Mohammed, what sort of evidence of human rights abuses is there at this point?
Well, we don't even need to look on the 16th and 15th and 16th and 17th and after that of February. We can even go back to 1996 when Colonel Gaddafi massacred and killed 1,200 political prisoners in prison in the infamous Abu Slim massacre, which the world seems to have ignored. The brutality of Colonel Gaddafi and his regime doesn't need evidence, really, but I do understand.
But the ICC, sir, does, doesn't it? Of course, the ICC does need evidence, and they've said that they're looking at a specific number of cases. What sort of evidence is there for those cases that they might be looking at?
Well, there is the use of high-caliber bullets. Anti-aircraft machine guns were used against citizens who were demonstrating peacefully. And actually, they ripped through the bodies of many citizens, and this is well documented. The doctors in hospitals have spoken of the horrors. The pictures on the internet speak of these horrors. The use of excessive force, too much excessive force, the use of bombing, shelling against, pure, simple demonstrators. Once this is over, there will be plenty of evidence for the ICC to look into.
Right.
My only worry is that the ICC will be spending too much time collecting evidence that is going to go on for months.
Well, we'll talk about you mentioned of evidence and go over to Mark. How easy will it be to link Gaddafi to the awful pictures that we're seeing, to some of the evidence that Mohammed was talking about there?
Well, two things, and I think we need to make certain that it's clear that this investigation, the ICC's jurisdiction, is only focused on what occurred from February 15th. That's the jurisdiction that the court has based on the referral from the ICC. So, unfortunately, any atrocities that were committed prior to that date will just simply not be dealt with by this particular court. The connection to Gaddafi or any leader is based on command responsibility. Did Gaddafi know, or should he have known, that the atrocities were being committed and he did nothing to stop them? If that's the case, then there is a connection to Mr. Gaddafi, and he could be held liable for those crimes.
Well, his sons some of his sons seem to be responsible for some of the security units. Does that strengthen the case against him?
Oh, absolutely, and that's more direct, kind of what we refer to as direct responsibility. Those that are in charge and that have actually, there's evidence suggesting that they actually made decisions to commit these crimes. And the court, remember, the prosecutor right now is only looking at being able to show that there's a reasonable basis to believe that these crimes were committed. That's a fairly low standard of proof right now, but that's what he's focusing on, so I suspect he'll be able to easily show that. It will be more difficult once you get into a trial phase, but right now we're simply looking at evidence that would suggest a reasonable basis to believe that these crimes were being committed, and it seems to me that that evidence is there.
Interesting point there on the phases, as you put it. Let's go over to the other Sami in this show. This is going to be several phases or stages. How effective will it then be if it's intended to kind of discourage any more human rights abuses?
Yeah, I think this is it's a really important question, because the trials and the investigations are an ongoing thing. So the question is, what is it going to do in the short term? And this is where I think the ICC referral may not be as effective. It's you know, this could be, they're saying it's a few months, but it could be a few years to try to gather the evidence. At the moment, the evidence
and by
that's
then,
coming out
God
of
knows
Libya
what could have happened in Libya. The situation changes within hours sometimes.
Exactly, and so the key is how do we put pressure at the moment? And my argument here is that we need to, in a sense, not isolate Gaddafi, because we know what that's done in the past with other dictators. The thing is, how do we give him a way out so that he's not killing his people? You know, we have all the time in the world to then investigate, to try, to do all these kind of things after this conflict is over. And certainly, you know, I'm sure we can all agree that we would love that. But at the moment, how do we create the conditions to give Gaddafi, you know, to send him into exile, or create the conditions for the people to get closer to him and to capture him?
All right, so you think the priority should be trying to get him into exile at the moment. Let's just recap what's been going on. Of course, during the uprising, Gaddafi certainly hasn't been shy. In his first speech, in a furious rant, he threatened his own people.
We
will sweep across the country in millions to cleanse Libya, corner by corner, house by house, street by street, person by person, until all Libya is rid of all this filth.
Well, in a later address, he made clear that all options were on the table to deal with the protesters.
We are capable of destroying the enemies by the will of the people, by the armed people. When necessary, arsenals will be open to arm all Libyan people, all the Libyan tribes. Libya will turn into red fire and ember.
All right, let's go to Mohammed now. With the point that Sami was making earlier, perhaps the emphasis now should be on simply getting Gaddafi out of Libya rather than giving him an incentive to dig his feet in and fight, because if he doesn't, he may end up in The Hague. Do you agree with that?
I totally agree with this. I think we're giving him two contradicting messages. On the one hand, we're telling him to get out, to stop the bloodshed. And on the other hand, we're telling him that we're going to take you to court. And frankly speaking, this means that Gaddafi will hold on to power to the last minute. And that's what we don't want. We don't want any more bloodshed. If he could leave the country, even if he's given sanctions,